you might remember me from such educational films as Lead Paint, delicious but deadly. Hi guys, I'm Donnie from G2G Coaching. So we've been doing a few videos recently talking about some of G2G's values, and I just want to use share an experience of mine today, which I think is quite a nice kind of story to kind of explain what I'm meaning. So one of our values is self-responsibility, okay? And as we mentioned in the video before, how do we go about what's a big part of self-responsibility? It is building autonomy and self-efficacy, okay? And how do we do that? One of the things that we have to do if we're going to really foster that and grow that and let it evolve is getting comfortable being uncomfortable. So we'll come back to that in a wee second. I just want to kind of set the scene a little bit. So another thing that we talk about a lot at G2G is just rediscovering your athletic identity. My athletic identity is very much a kind of core part of my identity. And what I mean by that, without wanting to sound like too much of a plonker, what I mean is for most of my life, athleticism, if you like, is something that's come quite naturally to me. And as I said, without wanting to sound too much like a plonker, most of the time when faced with something physical, I will usually be able to figure it out. And as I said, it comes naturally to me and I usually feel comfortable doing it. This is what I want to tell a story about a time at G2G when I was actually presented with something that I found really challenging and something that didn't come naturally. And it was about that process of, right, that was challenging my identity because I was used to being able to do whatever I wanted to be able to do. So all of a sudden, as I said, I was faced with something that I found very difficult, and it was how I would then, or how would one then approach that sort of a challenge. One of the awareness exercises that we use at G2G is a forearm wall slide. So we use awareness exercises as a way of helping people feel certain movement patterns, to help you kind of sequence movement patterns to make sure the right things are moving at the right time. Yes, so we use a forearm wall slide, which has proven to be a bit of a nemesis of mine. And it was the sort of situation where, as I said, I was used to being able to pretty much do whatever I wanted to do, and all of a sudden I was put in a situation where I was actually having to coach something that I found incredibly difficult. So much so that Aidan, being the lovely chap that he is, likes to jump on any opportunity when a wall slide needs demonstrated. He likes to put me out front.
Hey Donnie, can you demonstrate the wall slide for me?
And help me get comfortable being uncomfortable. And it was just want to talk a little bit about the kind of process involved in, right, this makes me uncomfortable, I don't understand it, all this sort of stuff. It's not that I don't understand it, at the start I don't even know what it is I'm supposed to be doing. So it was about going through that process of being uncomfortable, realizing that I couldn't do it, and then it was like, as I say, trying to figure it out with help, with coaching, but then also taking the responsibility and going, right, I can get the coaching, but it's also down to me to think about this and kind of problem solve a little bit to learn. Yeah, absolutely. So whilst doing forearm wall slides, I found incredibly challenging and made me feel a bit stupid and inept and all these sorts of things that people sometimes feel in the gym. And it was something that I wasn't used to feeling. So as I said, it was, right, I have a responsibility for this. How can I try and figure this out? What was a really interesting part of it for me as a coach was when I first started coaching, when you first start out, you look for absolutes. So you look for that one coaching cue that's going to cure everyone's problem. And as you get more experienced, you start to realize that probably one of the most kind of valuable things you can think about all times is staying open-minded and always kind of saying to yourself, well, it kind of depends. Everyone's different, so there probably aren't that many cues which are 100% applicable for 100% of people. So the reason I'm mentioning that is that when I first started, one of the cues I would hear a lot was to try and get your lats on, driving yourself into this kind of position here. A lot of the population are perhaps sat at a desk or maybe just in a slightly kind of elevated shoulder position. So getting them to get their shoulder blades down is actually probably quite a good thing. Get a little bit of extension through their thoracic spine as well. So this is a situation I'm saying where when these cues are not necessarily applicable to everybody. For somebody like me, who had spent most of their 20s trying to lift as much as I possibly could, doing pull-ups. I had developed into more of a kind of, I think, kind of athletic. It is something you do see in kind of athletes a little bit more, is a very extended position and what can sometimes be described as a military posture. So that is actually this kind of position here. Okay, so telling somebody like that to get the lats on is actually going to be quite kind of counterproductive. I had to figure all of this out and start to kind of put the pieces together, and as my understanding of how the body moved improved, I started to kind of piece this puzzle together and managed to get myself to a point where, by no means, I'm certainly not like a world champion wall slider, but if that's such a thing, I certainly, through that process of struggling and working on it and figuring it out, getting the coaching, getting advice, I want to be the best coach I can be. So it was about going, right, taking ownership of that, right, let's figure this one out, let's put the work in to start to try and understand that a little bit better so that I can then apply it to my own training and then also be better equipped to coach other people through it. Okay, so now we're going to look at the wall slides. So whilst this isn't a kind of how-to wall slide video, I'm just going to talk about some of the specifics of the reasons why I find it particularly difficult. So as we were saying a second ago, we were talking about that very kind of lat dominant military posture. So you're like this, as opposed to that kind of slightly rounded, elevated shoulder position there. So the things I need to realize was that tension isn't always the answer. And that was another thing that confused me at the start when I was coaching. My answer for everything was tighten up. Okay, but when you're coming to a position, so what's happening in a wall slide is we're actually looking for upward rotation of your shoulder blade. Okay, to allow that to happen, for somebody like me who is very lat dominant, what I actually need to do is I actually need to get my lat to chill out a little bit. Okay, so in the past when I first started doing wall slides, this is kind of what it felt like. I was here, and because I was so tight through my lats, I was being told, right, you want to elevate your shoulder blades, so I was basically getting to about here and that was it. Not going to get any further. So the kind of light bulb moment for me was actually going, right, okay, this is a situation where I need to try and deregulate or just get my lats to calm down a little bit and then actually see if I can get that full movement by relaxing my lats a little bit more. Ta-da! World champion wall slide. Another thing that I found was really, really interesting, and it might not be applicable today, but it was another thing that kind of clicked with me, was that understanding that the rib cage and your shoulder blades have this convex-concave relationship, and that was a bit of a kind of breakthrough for me, because what you're looking for is you want to create this nice curved globe-like shape through the rib cage, which is the convex. And then the scapula wants to be the concave, and you get a nice congruency through there, which means that you're creating this nice round shape for the scapula just to slide on. And if you've got kind of collapsed through your rib cage, you don't have that nice rounded shape, then the shoulder blade is not going to move as smoothly as you would like it to do on the rib cage itself. So how would you go about maybe creating that? Once again, we go back to, I'm very extended through my T-spine. So you see there's not much of a globe. Not much rounding going on. So one of the techniques we would use is to think about just using your breath to get a little bit more flexion through your T-spine. So breathing in and get a little bit more rounding through there, which then creates that kind of globe so the shoulder blades can then move. So one of the other things we're looking for on the wall slide is, can we move our shoulder blades without having any compensatory rib cage flare or pelvic tilt? So that's something that I do find quite difficult. So can I just move my shoulder blades without having to go into that really extended position there? Yeah, so it's about, can you move your limbs whilst keeping the core center of your body as stable as possible? Hold on a second. This is the same movement, but in reverse. Interesting. So what's interesting about that is that's kind of like a landmine, but going in the opposite direction. It's almost like we need to be coaching the movement and not the exercise.